Alright, let's do this. I'm just gonna sit back, relax, and enjoy the show. Before we get started, it might be helpful for me to explain just which Sonic the Hedgehog cartoon I'm talking about. After all, there were two running simultaneously on different TV channels in the early 90s, so to this day, they're often confused with one another. The first of these was actually Adventures of Sonic the Hedgehog, a slapsticky, Looney Tune-esque, episode-by-episode series that focused on Sonic and Tails annoying Dr. Robotnik and his henchmen to the point that they foil the mad scientist's plans for taking over planet Mobius. As previously stated, this show is kind of a mess and mostly only remembered for the Pingas meme and the Sonic Says segments at the end of each episode. I liked this show a lot when I was a kid, but I don't care for it anymore. And this Sonic month is all about the good points of Sonic the Hedgehog, which is why we're going to save this for another time. The other show that ran in the early 90s, however, is the one that we'll be focusing on today. Simply titled as Sonic the Hedgehog, this was an ABC-produced show that ran from September 1993 to December 1994 and featured a wholly original story and a much darker tone than its syndicated television cousin. And when I say a darker story, I mean it. The setting of this show is beyond bleak. The story revolves around Dr. Robotnik enslaving the entire planet of Mobius and turning the majority of all life on the planet into robots. Sonic and his friends are among the few that remain, and they do what they can to overthrow this tyrant, though at best they're merely a thorn in his side, and at least at first pose no real threat to the evil dictator. Even the way in which the show is designed is dark. The colors are muted, and browns, blacks, and grays are by far the most prominent, yet the backgrounds and enemy designs are unique and complement this style perfectly. Compare this to the other Sonic cartoon, which featured bright and vibrant hues to complement its more cartoony tone. But it isn't all doom and gloom in the show. Areas like the Great Forest and the home of Sonic and his friends Knothole are very colorful, contrasting the polluted landscape of the areas in which Robotnik has taken control over. These days the series is often referred to as Sonic SatAM, as in Sonic Saturday Morning, which is the time slot that it had on ABC. This helps to distinguish it from the other series as well as the games and comics. Alright, but enough background information. Let's sit down and watch this thing. But first, I am sitting here relaxing on the couch, so I think a drink is in order. Brandy on the rocks, my old friend. Alright, got me some brandy, got me some snackage. Let's binge watch this thing.
Sonic the Hedgehog.
My god, is this intro awesome!
Sonic the Hedgehog.
Not only does this intro get you pumped for every episode, but it also shows you the background of the story. Everything is all nice and colorful and peaceful, and then Robotnik shows up casting this huge shadow over the land. Then we get a transition of Robotnik's ship flying over the peaceful land, enveloping the frame, and then when it flies away, the same colorful scenery has been transformed into a mechanical dystopia. We then see Sonic and his friends fighting some robots, causing explosions, and running back to a safe area to celebrate. This tells us everything we need to know about the setting of this world, without the need for a whole bunch of exposition. Later in the series, the narrative backdrop is expanded on, but in the early moments of the show, this opening cinematic is all that we have to go on, and really it's all that we need. That's just genuinely good storytelling. Plant the seed of intrigue and slowly introduce new details and plot points to the audience, and that's probably the strongest component of the show overall. The other strong component of this show is its characters. Sonic, of course, is the main character, voiced here by Jaleel White.
Did I do that?
Yeah, that Jaleel White. Sonic is portrayed as happy-go-lucky, impatient, and
Rank and supersonic, it don't take any fuel, cause the rocket's in my pocket and I'm way past cool. Thank you, thank you, thank you.
so, Sonic's kind of annoying in this, but I think that's intentional. He's kind of portrayed as this guy who thinks he's a lot cooler than he actually is, but he has so much confidence in himself and his friends that it's pretty hard not to love him anyway, and thankfully, he's not always front and center, so his in-your-face attitude rarely overstays its welcome. Sally is our other main character, and really, she's the star of the show. She's the princess of Mobius and the rightful heir to the throne after her father, who is either missing or dead. However, unlike other princess characters from stories of this era, she isn't just some damsel in distress, but is actually one of the smartest and most capable characters in the show. Sonic's technically the leader of the freedom fighters, but Sally's the one who's really in charge. She's funny, sarcastic, and hardworking, and it's usually her decisions and actions that drive the plot. Her and Sonic are childhood friends, and it's clear that they have a lot of respect for one another, even if they don't always show it, which makes them a pretty strong team. We also have Rotor, who's the handyman slash inventor of the group, Bunny, who's the muscle, Antoine, the bumbling idiot slash comic relief, and Tails, who's just a kid.
Sonic, I gotta tell you something. It's a secret.
Then we have Robotnik, and man is this a great portrayal of Sonic's arch-nemesis. Usually Robotnik, or Eggman as he's better known today, is portrayed as a sort of incompetent villain, or at least a somewhat goofy one, or whatever the hell he was supposed to be in Sonic 06. Yeesh. But here in Sonic SatAM, he's kinda terrifying.
And while I'm away, I want you to take care of things. Or You will end up as the paperweight I've always wanted.
And he's definitely a lot more capable than every other incarnation of the egg-shaped villain, because unlike the other Robotniks whose goals are world domination, this Robotnik has already taken control of the planet, and his goals are simply exploiting the planet for his own sinister desires and tying up the loose ends from before his reign of terror began. Robotnik's right-hand man is his nephew Snively, who probably has the worst job ever and is constantly belittled and abused by his uncle. And speaking of uncles, we also have another big character, and that of Sonic's Uncle Chuck. Yeah, Sonic has an Uncle Chuck in this, just go with it. Chuck acted as the head scientist for Mobius before Robotnik took over, captured him, and turned him into a robot. It's shown in the series that when a person is turned into a robot, they lose all free will and act only on orders from Robotnik. Eventually, Chuck manages to regain control of his mind, becoming a spy for Sonic and friends, but in the first half of the series, he's just another poor soul enslaved by Robotnik. Sonic and his friends aren't the only freedom fighters in Knothole, but these other characters aren't named and usually only show up in the background or to act as cannon fodder in a mission. Like, look at these two. They don't have names or voices or even facial expressions, and their only role in the story is to get captured and turned into robots. And that's like one of the biggest flaws of this show, that anytime a character without a name shows up, you instantly know they're a goner. But if they have a name, they're either part of the main cast, or they're going to betray the freedom fighters and help Robotnik and then most likely become a friend later on. Well, except for Cat, who's a primary character in the very first episode after the pilot. Cat helps Sonic, Sally, and Antoine infiltrate Dr. Robotnik's base, has a voice and a name, and helps out in the mission quite a bit. In fact, he's portrayed as if he's going to be a regular on the show, but then he just gets captured and presumably turned into a robot, and then the episode just ends and he's never seen nor spoken about again. Damn, Sonic and his friends go through allies like they're Tic Tacs. There's a pattern here I'm noticing in the episodes. Most of them start with Sonic and crew infiltrating Robotropolis, finding out some piece of information, and returning to Knothole to do a thing, and then there's usually a fight with Robotnik, and then the episode just ends. This is most likely due to the nature of this being a weekly cartoon for kids, and you get the sense that the creators of the show wanted to bring an epic story to the audience that continued from one episode to the next, but also wanted to make this a show that you could get a complete story arc out of if you happen to stumble across this while rifling through TV channels. And for the most part, they managed to pull this off, but occasionally you find some snags where potential plot points are dropped, such as when Cat just disappears in episode 1 and is never heard from again, or how bits of backstory sometimes conflict from episode to episode. Nothing major, though I doubt anyone can watch the entire show without stumbling across at least one loose plot thread or continuity error, but whatever, this is a kid's show, and compared to every other video game cartoon from this era, these issues are pretty easy to overlook. The show only got 2 seasons and unfortunately ended on a cliffhanger, which I won't spoil if you're interested in watching it for yourself, and between the two, Season 1 is much stronger, though Season 2 isn't terrible and certainly has its moments. Season 1 is all about minor missions the freedom fighters undertake to try and thwart Robotnik's plans, and rarely sees them making any meaningful change. At least initially, it doesn't really matter what the freedom fighters do to sabotage Robotnik, they only seem to be annoying him rather than doing any serious damage to his world. They're just a bunch of adolescents who are way too underpowered to be any real threat to the mad scientist, but yet they fight on, trying to return their world to how it was when they were kids. I personally prefer this darker tone, mostly because it's so rare to see anything like this in a kid's cartoon, and because it makes the characters so much more enjoyable to watch. We get to see their struggles and celebrate small victories with them, and my god, what a great message to give to your audience, that no matter how dark things get, you can always grit your teeth, laugh through your tears, and keep fighting for a better tomorrow. All that from a show centering on a mildly annoying blue hedgehog. That's pretty damn impressive. Season 1 has its flaws, but it's about as good as you can get for a video game-based cartoon. On the flip side, we have Season 2, which isn't nearly as strong, but it's still pretty decent. It starts after what seems like a time skip, with everyone looking a little bit older, with their missions seemingly having a bigger impact on Robotnik's world. Season 2 is a little bit cartoonier and has a lot more comedic moments. I get the feeling this was due to the success of the other, more lighthearted Sonic the Hedgehog cartoon, or that the creators just felt the kids weren't responding well to a show with such a bleak world. Yeah, well, I was responding well to this bleak world. I like both shows at the time, but this is the one that I really liked. Though, come to think of it, my favorite movie at the time was Alien, so I probably wasn't the best judge for the reactions of the target demographic of this show. Most of the characters have also undergone a visual redesign to fit this new tone. Sally is a little bit taller and now wears a vest, Antoine's face looks weird and he's a lot preppier than before, which is saying something. Bunny looks about the same, and holy fuck, Rotor! What have they done to you? Why'd they do that? His character design was fine before. Actually, it was great. Now he looks like a completely different person. In fact, when I was a kid, I remember thinking this was a completely different character, but nope, same guy. The fuck? Anyway, Sonic, Tails, Robotnik, and Snively all pretty much look the same, and Dulcie looks a little weird, but she looked a little weird and... wait a minute. Who the fuck is Dulcie? She just shows up in episode 1 of season 2 with no explanation, and the show just acts as if she's been there the whole time. No introduction, nothing. She's this dragon who keeps changing size from scene to scene. I don't think that's a character trait, just an animation error, like how her mouth always looks like it's about to fall off. I guess she's supposed to be the comic relief character, but why? We already have Antoine. Sure, he's kind of annoying, but he has his moments, and the way in which he's constantly using the wrong word is written to surprising effect in the show.
Got it.
Gringo.
Antoine, it's bingo, not gringo.
Whatever, season 2 is mostly about Sonic and crew finding out about the other resistance groups scattered around Mobius and trying to contact them so they can band together against Robotnik. There's also a 2-part episode where Sonic and Sally go back to the past to try and stop Robotnik before he takes over, by killing him, I guess. Yeah, so it isn't explicitly stated, but a subtextual reading of the show leads you to believe that the Freedom Fighters are actively trying to kill Robotnik, and in fact, there are a few moments in the show where they think they've done just that and respond like that's what they were intending to do all along. They don't even dance around it and say things like, "He's dead," rather than, "He's gone." Just in case you forgot how dark this kids show is. So in this Back to the Past story arc, we finally get to meet Sally's father, King Acorn, and holy shit, is that Tim Curry?
Julian plotting against the throne? A serious allegation, Sir Charles. I assume you have proof.
Fucking A right it is. Damn, season 2 just got a whole lot better. We also find out that Robotnik used to be a commander for King Acorn before staging a coup, and that the king isn't dead but has been banished to another dimension by Robotnik, and... wait, hold on. So, Robotnik hasn't actually killed anyone, just banished them or turned them into robots, yet Sonic and his friends have actively tried to kill Robotnik and Snively like at least 4 times, and most of their missions involve blowing up his stuff. And a great deal of the robots doing Robotnik's dirty work are the roboticized citizens of planet Mobius, meaning that the Freedom Fighters are essentially terrorists blowing up enslaved civilians. This show gets darker the more I think about it. Anyway, I'm probably thinking about it too much. Dark or not, this season is still pretty good and downright great by video game cartoon standards, but if I had to sum up the major flaw season 2 has over season 1 in a single word, it would be Dulcie. I fucking hate this character. I must have completely blocked her from my memory as a kid because I did not remember her at all. Apart from having an incredibly annoying voice, she's constantly creating all this shitty slapstick quote-unquote humor and will not stop saying
Ma, 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 ma.
She's basically the Poochie of Sonic SatAM and should have been dealt with in the same way.
I have to go now. My planet needs me.
But I digress. Overall, though, this is a pretty good show. It's not great by any stretch of the imagination, but it's held up surprisingly well over the years, and compared to the rest of the cartoons based on video games, it's definitely one of the best. This was one of my favorite shows when I was a kid, and it's been great reconnecting with these characters after all these years. The show certainly has a lot of flaws, and season 2 is pretty much a hit or miss experience, but if you can look past all that, you may just find something worthwhile. Well, I suppose. Sitting back and relaxing is nice and all, but Sonic Month rolls on, and we've got work to do. Let's see what to talk about next. Oh, hey, I know. Sonic CD.